to set a bit of context first of all. Hands up, anybody who knows what that is? Hands up, anyone who's got the hands up can actually remember whether it's any good or not? I keep wanting to say it was a terrible film, but I can't actually remember it, and I can't find it anywhere to watch it anymore. So this is Lawnmower Man. It was a seminal film about, obviously, dystopian VR future in 1992. And this was kind of an inspiration for me, because at the time I was studying psychology, human-computer interaction, and artificial intelligence. And my dissertation was about how VR could be used to rehabilitate offenders and also treat people with certain medical conditions. So it's really interesting to see that that's actually part of the discussion that's happening at the conference here. I'm from the National Theatre, which is a wonderful example of concrete Brutalism. We are based on the South Bank. We've got 3 theatres. We've been described as the busiest producing theatre in the world. So it's like a theatre making factory. So we've got huge carpentry workshops, metalworks, props, like a 5-story paint frame where there's cranes that go up and down and paint the sets. We've got an armory where we make bombs and guns. Literally the whole thing is done on site. There's about 1,000 people work there all the way through, and probably about 1,250 people there when you've got all the different productions in as well. We do about 30 plays a year, which is a huge amount to do, and we broadcast live to cinemas around the world, which these figures are actually out of date. We've got audiences of about 7 million people around the world now. And we also do transfers into the West End and to Broadway and tours around the world. So I've just got a little video that will just give you an example of some of the work that we do.
Counting to show 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I still love you. I loved you more than anyone on earth.
Never pray more. Abandon all remorse.
Where are we?
In hell.
Sometimes one just has to draw the line.
Foul deeds will rise, though all the earth overwhelm them to men's eyes.
That's actually a trailer for NT Live, which is the live to cinema broadcast. So in terms of just a bit from me where I think we are in terms of VR at the moment, someone from Oculus at Sundance earlier this year described us being at the kind of 8mm phase of VR. And I actually think it's a lot earlier than that, particularly when it comes to storytelling and then kind of how you interplay interaction with that. VR years are like dog years in that there's so much happens in one like 12-month period, so that's the only kind of analogy I can come to. And also, it's a complete gold rush state of mind in that everybody's on it and wanting to do it. And those 3 things, for me, are a perfect storm. One, of great opportunity, but also a huge opportunity for a lot of really terrible work to be made, which is fine, because people need to go through that phase, but what we need to do as kind of practitioners in the field is test, but kind of keep the bad tests to ourselves. Like, what we don't want is audiences to get really bored by endless, boring VR marketing campaigns, because that's just going to lose the attention of the audience. So in terms of where we come into, this is Rufus Norris, who's our artistic director, and I put a headset on him probably about 18 months ago, and he'd just started in the job, and it was on a really rickety cardboard, and he was actually walking New York, and he took the headset off and just stared at me for 10 seconds, at which point I don't know how to read this. Is this a good sign or a bad sign? Have I just lost my job? And then he just said, we've got to do something with this now. He was really kind of incensed, and he knew that it was a technology that people were very, very much getting used to. Like, we didn't know where it's going to. Nobody really knows where it's going to in terms of dramatic storytelling, but it has got huge storytelling potential. And us as a national storytelling organisation should be right in there finding out what it means to us and what it means to theatre. He's very kind of progressive and will push for new things, and one of the things, like, he was reading Creativity Inc. at the time about Pixar as well, and he was just saying that it's that thing where technology is great, but it's when you bring the creatives in that it becomes absolutely phenomenal, and that's where the real kind of exponential curve comes in. So our first kind of endeavour was a show called Wonderland, which is Damon Albarn's musical adaptation of Alice in Wonderland. And Alice is actually an avatar of a high school girl called Ali, and the rabbit hole's the internet. And so when they came to me and saying, what do you want to do with this? The first thing they said is, do you want to make a game? And I was like, really don't want to make a game because we're not game developers, so we're not going to do, we're not game developers, we've got no time, no money, so we're not going to be able to do a really good job. But we had started kind of playing around with Oculus and Unity, and this seemed like the perfect kind of experience, like what better world to explore than Wonderland in VR. So this is Che, the Cheshire Cat, and this is Che in his natural environment. So this is what Wonderland is in the show. And what we did was we worked with the show's designers who'd made Wonderland to be projected in 2D onto stage, and we worked with them and another company called Play Nicely, who then worked in Unity to turn it into a VR music experience. Now, in the show, Ali avoids the school bullies by going into the toilets at school, and then she goes on a phone, and then goes into Wonderland. And our virtual reality music experience took you into Wonderland, so you landed in Wonderland and got serenaded by Che the cat. So what we did was we worked with the show's set designers, and we recreated the school toilets front of house. So you had to sit on the toilet to do the VR, to go into Wonderland, which worked incredibly well as a kind of overall theatrical setting. There were 6 toilets there. They were open from 12 noon till 11 at night, and we had over 90,000 people in 5 months, which is just insane. If we'd had like 20,000 people do the VR, that would have been amazing, but 90,000. People had to queue for the toilets, but they're used to queuing for toilets. That was okay. This is one of my favorite pictures with the little kid whose feet don't even touch the floor. Everybody of all ages. I hate people who are technophobes and think it's just for young people. We also had a green screen experience, and just after this lady was trying to take a photograph of her husband doing the green screen experience. The only reason she couldn't do it was because she couldn't use a phone, but they had both engaged with the kind of technology that we put in front of them. So as a kind of first endeavour, it really, really worked for us, both in terms of making the VR, which is picked up by Sundance Film Festival and other festivals around the world, and then getting that amount of audience through was really, really kind of indicative to us that this was a good direction to go into. So we set up, probably only 4 or 5 months ago now, what we call the Immersive Storytelling Studio, which was just a formalization of the work that we were doing in this area. It's part of the new work department, which is really important. So the new work department is where productions kind of gestate possibly 2 years before they even get on stage. So for us to have that kind of technology in place to bring in kind of new writers and directors to explore this kind of stuff is quite important, I think. And it is also, I think, what's really we've got to do a sense check is that theatre regularly uses technology and has been using it for thousands of years. So at the end of the day, this is an amazing new technology, but it's got to be used hand in hand with the creatives for us to get the best effects. We've got 12 strands of work that we're doing in the Immersive Storytelling Studio. I'm not going to go through them all. I'm just going to touch on a few of them just to give you a sense of what we're up to. Do people know what verbatim theatre is? Hands up if anybody knows what verbatim theatre is, if that's a more direct question. No? One, okay, hello. So verbatim theatre is, it comes from verbatim interviews. So we had a show on called Another World earlier this year, which was about young people who run away to join ISIS. And the writer had interviewed the people that run away, the parents, the school friends, people from like government and army officials, and had weeks worth of interview material. And what they do is they condense it down and condense it down and condense it down until what in this case was a 90-minute show. And I just think that's incredibly. It's an incredible skill to be able to do that, because why should there even be a story there anyway? So this show was incredibly moving, and the writer Gillian Slovo was speaking to, as we are, Aleki Blythe, about new verbatim work. But one of the things that it came to mind for us to do, we did some filming in the Calais jungle, and we wanted to tell stories of people who had spent time in the jungle, and this we developed a film called Homo Mia, which is a verbatim storytelling piece about a 22-year-old Sudanese refugee who's been displaced from his home country through ethnic cleansing, and he tells his story basically of how he got to be where he is. And in terms of that thing of VR putting you in the shoes of another, it was a really kind of a great learning opportunity to see how VR and 360 can do that for us as storytellers. We've just started a project with the National Film Board of Canada, and we've got 2 UK artists and 2 Canadian artists, and what we're going to do is develop a prototype for each of the artists' work. And for this and one of the projects I'm going to talk about, it's so interesting in that we, putting the creatives in with the technology, there's forms of performance that have developed just in the first week workshop that just didn't exist before, that we wouldn't have banked on. And it always, how the willingness for people to push it beyond what people think the expected rules are that you should do with certain technologies. So I'm really, really excited to see where that project goes to. And we've got 2 weeks in London in November and December where we're going to complete the prototypes. So hopefully early next year we'll have stuff for people to be able to see. We're working with Oscar Raby and Vertov. People know Oscar's work, Ascent. So he was kind of the first, he was attributed as the first decent storyteller in this new wave of VR, and Ascent was his first piece. And we had 2 weeks where we literally just sat down and questioned actually what is VR, what is theatre, broke them down into the component pieces, and started to look at where the overlaps are. And so we've got this really interesting project that is going to kind of treats VR not as a technology as such, or you wouldn't go to see something because it's a VR show, you go to see something because it's got really good VR, and in the same way that it's got really good set design or it's got really good lighting design. One of his pieces is Easter Rising, Voice of a Rebel, which was developed with the BBC and Crossover Labs, and in complete serendipity, this was developed alongside a show that we had on about the Easter Rising in Ireland. And so what happened is when the BBC launched this, they knew that Wonderland had worked really well for us and said, oh, you've got a show on about exactly the same subject matter. Would you think about showing Easter Rising at the National? Which we did, but one of the more interesting things that happened is I showed it to the director, and he came back the next day and said, actually, can we show the VR to the actors, particularly the soldiers, because he thinks it would really help with the character work. So we did, and it really, really did. It was a complete unexpected thing, but they all reported comments like, oh, it really helped me feel what it was like to be a soldier on the steps of the GPO. And we then obviously now get questions like, are you going to use VR to train actors all the time? The answer to which is no. That was just a happy coincidence. Riot is an emotionally responsive film. It's a project that we're supporting by an artist, Karen Palmer, and basically it uses facial recognition technology to detect your mood. And so it's about getting through a riot experience, and you're presented with a riot police officer in your face with a gun, and if you respond in fear, the film goes in one direction. If you respond with aggression, then the film goes in another direction. And it's a prototype at this point, but we're gonna take it further into full development. We've got what we're calling a film school, whereas we look at kind of different theatrical techniques and how they relate to 360 filmmaking. So we've been doing a lot of work recently on blocking and how to move a conversation around a room in a way that doesn't mean that your audience is completely flailing and looking around the whole time. And we're doing kind of lighting workshops, sound workshops, set design workshops. But the big thing that we're in it for is new writing and new work. So we are commissioning new work specifically for 360 and VR experiences. But it's all the activity in this area is going to help us be good storytellers with this form. And we've got to do all this groundwork, we've got to do all this research to be able for us to know that we can then go on to tell good stories, rather than just assuming, because we tell good stories already, that we can jump into a new medium and that's going to work. Cool. That's it.